Hello, I'm Peaceful Nick the Medium. Welcome to Let's Talk Telepathy Tapes. Tonight, I want to delve into the telepathy tapes. I watched the original 9 or 10 episode podcast. I do want to give a disclaimer. I am not a professional special education teacher. I am a professional teacher and scientist, but I had a little pushback from someone who is an educator and is suffering with autism about this subject. So I just want to say I am not promoting the telepathy tapes. I am not promoting abuse of anyone, especially autistic children. I am not promoting anything of that sort. So please know that this is the entire reason why I viewed the telepathy tapes was because it was about telepathy, and I'm a medium and I'm a scientist, and so I find it fascinating. I in no way would ever think to take advantage of a child or a person who has any kind of issues, learning challenges, anything like that. So I just want to put that disclaimer out there. So if people get upset, I'm just reporting on my opinion of what I saw. So if you watched the telepathy tapes and you're watching this live, or if you are watching the replay and you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything, please put it in the chat. I'm going to turn my light on. Oh, that's better. So, hello, moments. Good night. Will there be a time to ask questions? You can ask questions anytime. And yeah, Trent, hello. I've been loving Mayim's videos since you mentioned her on your last live. Yeah, Elizabeth Cronin, her near-death experience. Yeah, I love to watch Mayim Bialik's podcast because she's also a scientist, and she is very left-brained scientist. And her partner, I think his name is Josh, he is a very right-brained person. So he's much more into metaphysical things and paranormal things. He's much more accepting of things like that in his brain than Mayim Bialik is. But I do applaud her for exploring these subjects because not every scientist will do that. Let me know if this is cutting out because one of my screens is running clear and one of them is breaking up because I have to run this through a third-party app. And it seems like it's glitching, so please let me know if it's glitching on your end because I may have to open my door for that. So let me know how your viewing experience is. Okay. So the telepathy tapes. I'm going to jump right in. Mystic, Makala, and the auras. I have seen auras. I don't practice it regularly, but I have seen auras throughout my life and throughout my mediumship when I was getting trained. Okay, good. It's not glitching. Excellent. Thank you for being here. So I did watch the video with Mayim Bialik about the telepathy tapes. That's pretty much how I found out about it. And it was fascinating. So I'm going to take you through a very brief overview of what happens in the episodes. So I took some notes. I will be reading notes on here. Oh yeah, Trent, auras change depending on your mood, depending on your what you're going through can change moment to moment. So your main color may be purple, but it can vary throughout the day, the night. Yeah. I don't remember what color mine was when I got it looked at. But yeah, it does change. All right. So episode 1 they're explaining. So the lady's name is Kai, the podcaster. Let me get this. Moments gap. Is my mediumship only deceased people or other types of beings? I do communicate with animals. I've never communicated with aliens. I have communicated with guides and angels. Hello, Elise. Welcome, welcome. And purple's my favorite color. Okay, so episode 1. The lady who does the podcast is named Kai. And I found it very interesting that, you know how when you play a playlist on YouTube, that it'll just keep playing one episode to the next. I clicked on the playlist to play it, and it wouldn't keep playing. I had to go out of the playlist and research, and it was very hard to get the playlist back. It was not as simple as just typing it in. So if anybody else had that experience, please let me know in the comments. Hi, Anne from the UK. Welcome in. So if anybody has any experience with telepathy, please let me know in the chat. I'd be happy to hear your stories, because as a medium, I use telepathy all the time because I am communicating with loved ones in spirit. That's a telepathic connection. So the telepathy tapes are basically, the first couple of episodes cover some stories of some autistic kids. And it is about how, and they're nonverbal, and they call them spellers. And this is all new to me. I didn't know this. And there's a lot of controversy about nonverbal autistic kids using an iPad, or here, I'll just make an example. They'll use a pad to point to with the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, and they'll spell things by pointing to letters. And that has caused a lot of controversy. Some of them can type, and so there's controversy for some reason, and if anybody knows, please let me know. I don't understand why it's controversial. I honestly don't understand. I'm not being facetious. I don't understand why it's controversial to allow non-speakers to spell and make words. I don't understand that because it's not in my area of expertise. So the first couple episodes were about nonverbal autistic kids they're not little tiny kids. They're like teenager age. And all of the videos of all of the research the scientists and the podcaster participated in are all on the websites. I think it's called the telepathytapes.com. Trent, I can send it, but I can't do it in the middle of the stream. I can link it below after the stream is over. So the first episode covers a young lady from Mexico who was a nonverbal autistic who they believed was communicating telepathically with her mother. And then the second episode was another nonverbal autistic kid who was communicating telepathically with his mother. I may get some of the minor details wrong, so forgive me, because I watched 10 episodes in like 12 hours, so it was a lot of information, because it was fascinating. So there was a teacher probably 20 or 30 years ago who was a special education teacher of autistic kids who discovered her kids were reading her mind. And so she sent recordings. She tested these kids. This was a very, decades ago. She tested these kids. They're nonverbal autistic kids. And she tested them with different, different ways you test telepathy, with like playing cards and color cards, and like they couldn't see her and she'd hold a card up behind the kid and the kid would type or point or write out the letter. Some of those might have been verbal, of the color. So she did all these tests. She sent them to all these scientists and just got laughed at, basically, because anything that's not tangible and material in science is laughed at and frowned upon. But we all know that when we explore the perimeter of science and go into the metaphysical pseudoscience range, that's what pushes science forward. Because I say, when people tell me to prove mediumship is real, prove it scientifically. I get that at least once a day, if not 10 times a day on my social media. It happened to me earlier today on a live stream. Prove it's real. Prove it. Prove it scientifically. And I always say the line from the movie Contact, when Matthew McConaughey asks Jodie Foster, do you love your father? Because her father died when she was young. And she's like, of course. And he said, prove it. So that's my answer to all these scientists. You can't prove love. You cannot measure it. It cannot be measured. It cannot be proven scientifically. But every single person on earth knows it's real. So, and I get real passionate about it. So Trent said, I watched a movie about a woman who was a caregiver to a nonverbal autistic man, and she fell in love with him. And long story short, she went to jail for having an intimate relationship with him. Okay. Yeah. So that's why there's some controversy, right? Now, I don't know. I haven't seen that movie. I know nothing about that case, and I'm sure there's a good reason for that. And so it's a shame, and I never condone taking advantage of anybody. And that's a shame. So come to find out, that teacher from decades ago was testing these kids. She recorded hours and hours of videos, sent it off to like people at Harvard and Yale and all these different colleges, all these professors that, you know, studied things like this, and basically got laughed at. So fast forward to more modern day, these parents are starting to realize their kids are reading their minds. And so in the second episode, they had this kid who was, you know, pointing to numbers or typing. Some of them were typing. Some of them were pointing to numbers and letters. I just don't remember which is which. And they would ask him math questions, or the mom would stand behind him and not touch him. He couldn't see her. Sometimes there was like a shield up, and there was no way this kid, they took down all the mirrors, all the pictures, all the TV screens. There were 5 cameras on them, all these reflective, anything reflective. And so the mom's putting it in her mind, whatever the number is, and they did math problems too. And the kid's doing the numbers 100% of the time. 3-digit numbers, 4-digit numbers, 100% of the time. Hi, Mandy. I'm glad you're here. So it was fascinating. And for me, if you watch it, it's compelling, that's for sure. Now, of course, because I always do my due diligence with anything, and I've always done this my whole life before I was a medium, I look at both sides of everything. I look at the side that's being reported, and then I look at the skeptical side. So there was an article in the Skeptical Inquirer, which I have a lot of feelings about that magazine, that just lambasted this whole thing. But what happens is some of these skeptics are skeptics to just be skeptics. They're not viewing the information. They're not viewing the experiment personally. They're only taking what they heard or taking a report from somebody else. They're not really participating. And so they're paid skeptics. And I read the article, and it was just really upsetting me because, again, prove you love your spouse, prove you love your children, prove you love your mother, prove it. You can't. And so, but in telepathy, you can prove it because you can test it and it's repeatable. And they were testing these kids, and it was repeatable 100% of the time. It was incredible. Absolutely incredible. That's how the caregiver taught the man. Moments gap, yes. You can, this is a little off subject, but I'm going to answer this because it's about mediumship. When a medium communicates with a loved one in spirit, it doesn't matter what the language is because the messages are energy. And so you don't have to hear words to get a message, but the spirit would know my native tongue and would communicate that way because they basically can do that because they would understand that. Okay, so I'm just looking through my notes. Oh, and the other thing I thought was cool was the kid in episode 2's name was Akil, and he was getting messages from 20 or 30 years ago from loved ones in spirit of his family that he never knew, which really perked up my, my antenna. Were like, ooh, that's interesting. Because if you have telepathy, you probably can communicate with loved ones in spirit. Now, that there is, for that scientifically, of course, you would have to have recorded what he said. You would have to verify that there's no way he would know those people or know of those people, which is hard to do in a family situation. And you would have to record the family members finding out that information. So that you would have to kind of just believe or not believe it, because you can't really prove that fact in that instance. And then a quote from one of the people in that episode 2 was, every non-speaker has the ability to communicate telepathically. My question I wrote is, what happens when the mother of these children pass? Because mainly they were communicating through their mother. Now, I later found out in later episodes they can communicate with other people telepathically as well. On to episode 3. The Telepathy Tapes, girl. It's on YouTube. It's got like a pink background. It's fascinating. And let me know when you guys watch it and come back, please comment on my video and let me know what you think. So on to episode 3. It starts with Lucille Ball, the famous actress. And I had heard the story before, but I never really made the connection to telepathy. She did an interview and she was talking about she had metal fillings, temporary fillings put in, and she was driving through Hollywood and she heard music in her mouth and she didn't understand. Some of you may have heard the story before. And then she was telling somebody about it, and they're like, yeah, you picked up the radio station because you drove down such and such street. And metal is a conductor, so certain types of metal can pick up radio waves. And then there was a man, this is another story in episode 3, who was sent to a psych ward because he was picking up voices on the metal in his fillings. And when they switched out the metal, the voices in his head went away and he was fine. That just goes to show you how little we know, right? And then a quote from episode 3 is, under the right conditions, our brain acts as a receiver of radio signals. And that's what I have. And when I heard that, I was tearing up, because if any of you have followed me for very long, you know I've said many, many times, we are like an antenna. And when we put mediums and people, when you put out a signal to your loved ones in spirit, when you think about your deceased mother or your deceased spouse or your deceased child or grandmother, when you think about them, you're putting out a signal, a radio signal, an energetic signal, and they receive it telepathically because it's energy. Our brains, our heart, our whole body is an electrical conductor made of salt water, which is one of the best conductors on earth. in the universe. So every part of our body biologically is conducting electricity. Our cells are electrical conductors. So why would it be impossible for us to send out electrical signals, radio signals, some other kind of signals from our mind, from our heart, from any part of our body? Let's see. Tell them you love me. Okay, Trent, tell me what your opinion was briefly. You don't have to go into details. Do you think she was taking advantage of the man? Like, what's your instinct? Was it skewed towards that? Because, documentaries can be skewed towards anything. That's why I always look at both sides. And not heard of this at all. I'm watching because I teach autistic children. Interesting. Oh, I'm so glad you're here then. What experiences have you had? Have you ever thought your students have been able to read your mind telepathically? There's a lot of stories in this podcast about teachers who teach autistic children, and that they were like, I think these kids are reading my mind. Interesting. I'd love to hear your opinion. But definitely watch the telepathy tapes and let me know if you see any similarities to your students. Oh, Trent's on the fence. Yeah, that stinks, right? And the most fascinating thing, and this is so incredible. If you have not watched the telepathy tapes, this part is the part that was the most amazing and mind-blowing to me. Oh, you're a medium too. Wow. I was also a teacher for 20 years, but of not autistic children, just regular kids. Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, lots of teachers are mediums and lots of nurses are mediums. Trent said she didn't seem like someone who would do that, but I like to believe the best in people always. Yeah. Yeah, I would need to know more about that for sure. And these people have their own agency, and I think we're underestimating them personally. Okay, so the most amazing, mind-blowing thing of the whole series was when the kids from different areas who didn't know each other, their parents didn't know each other, they were in different states and different places. I think there was one in the UK, actually. I believe, I could be off on that. When they said they talk on the hill. And the people were like, what does that mean? We talk on the hill. So what it means is the nonverbal autistic people, it's not always kids, people, they telepathically meet each other on the hill, which is a place they call the hill. It's the hill of thoughts, where they communicate with each other from across the world in this place they've dubbed the hill. In more than one, several different people from across the country and the world said this to their teachers, to their mothers, to their therapists, whoever. And it's like, what? I was like, what? They all say the same thing. And then there was another version, I can't remember the name of it, another set of kids who had a different name for it. They didn't call it the hill, they called it something else. But it's like, what is happening? This is incredible. If this is true, this will change the paradigm of everything we know. Because I think we underestimate people with autism. I think we underestimate people on the spectrum. I do not have autistic children. I've never taught an autistic child. I cannot speak to that. But I do know that our brains are incredible, and they can do incredible things. And I believe that I believe that this is possible. That's my initial belief. Then I'm gonna read some quotes from episode 3. The talk on the hill. The kids said all nonverbal kids communicate telepathically. That was from one of the kids. And then another one said this might be a merging of consciousness where they because I believe, if you've watched me for a while, that we are a collective consciousness in the universe. We're all connected. And so that didn't surprise me. In reality, it surprised me that it was in the podcast. Like, it was amazing. We can merge our consciousness and communicate with each other. And then a kid said in episode 3, when you're autistic, you are a magnet for all energy, good and bad. Regarding the stones a friend gave mom. Okay. Oh, I forgot about the story. So there was a mom who was amazing. She had 5 kids. She was married to a very abusive man, ended up leaving and divorcing him. But her oldest child was autistic, and he was out of control autistic. He had no emotional regulation at all. And he would like wipe feces on the wall, and he would scream and yell and strip himself naked, and, very out of control, because it's hard to know how to manage someone who is dealing with this. And so he said to her that quote about when you're autistic, you're a magnet for all energy. So a friend of hers brought a present that she was going to give to the daughter in the family. So she brought the mom this present to give to the daughter. And it was stones, some type of crystals or rocks that the friend prayed over and blessed for the daughter. Well, the mom hid the stones. And the autistic child, the oldest son, came in yelling and screaming at the mom for the rocks. Give me the rock. He didn't know what was in the box. It was wrapped up in a present. He didn't know, but he knew they were there. He said he could feel the energy. Give me the rocks. Give me the rocks. Give me the rocks. And it's amazing. And now his whole bedroom is just full of crystals and rocks because he feels the energy of the rocks, and says everything, which I believe, well, it's called piezoelectric energy. Everything has an electrical, some type of energy coming off of it. Inanimate objects, rocks. I have a crystal ball on my desk. I have, lip gloss, my cell phone, my Burt's Bees, my tissue box. Everything has an energetic imprint, and stones and crystals and the lattices. I know there's a geologist on here. If you know anything about the piezoelectric energy from stones, please chime in. It's just so much. It's so amazing. There's a transmission of mechanical energy to electrical energy, and electrical energy to mechanical energy, and it goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Danielle Smith, hello. Makes sense. Ever walk into a crystal store, it vibrates. Yeah. So some of us can pick up on that energy and some of us can't. Just depends what you're tuned into. So I thought that was incredible. That was episode 3. And another thing that was mentioned in episode 3 was these autistic kids, this is how they were phrasing it, can receive information possibly from a wider range of the electromagnetic spectrum. So for those of you who don't know, the electromagnetic spectrum goes from gamma rays, which are the most energetic waves, and it goes gamma and all these other ones, and then it slows down and goes to radio, and the radio waves are real slow and weak. That's what our radio waves come from. But in the middle, right in this little tiny piece in the middle, is the visible spectrum. That's everything we see. But they're alluding to the fact that these kids can pick up on other parts of that spectrum. That doesn't surprise me because there's animals that can do that. Yeah. Piezoelectricity in our DNA. Yeah, because we are electrical conductors. Everything in every cell is electrical conduction. Yes. Exactly. So when they talk on the hill, then they were talking about the talk on the hill, telepathically talking to each other on the same frequency. So they like tune into their radio station to go talk to each other. It was incredible. Then they were talking about thoughts becoming things, which we've talked about before, where the things we think about, like spelling is called spelling because words cast spells, kind of the same thing, right? Thoughts become things. Episode 5 was a teacher who did tests. Oh, I think this was the lady from a few decades ago. She sent videos to the scientists who ignored or ridiculed her or censored her. And so this is the thing that makes me the most frustrated. Material science, like the scientists who don't believe in anything other than what they can see, feel, touch, or hear. Has to be in front of them. It has to be tangible to be real. And it reminds me, and I've said this many times, of religious dogma. There's also scientific dogma. So dogma isn't just for religion. It's also for science and any other belief system that you stick to and you refuse to see anything else. And you're just not going to look at the evidence. You're just going to ignore the evidence and you're going to say, this is what I believe, and that's it. Trent, agree. So people who have NDEs talk about seeing colors that are different from the colors we see. Hearing music that's very different and more beautiful. Yes, because they're picking up on other wavelengths. That's my belief. Yeah. And then Rupert Sheldrake, look his studies up. He went to Cambridge and Harvard. He's done, just Google him. It's a whole rabbit hole itself. Pause for a question from Moments Gap. What is your take that mostly women are interested in the subject or open to consult mediums? Or is your experience different? Is it a generational thing? I don't know if it's a generational thing, but I know about 90% of my clients are women. And I think that is because women are taught more how to regulate their emotions and be vulnerable, and men are not taught. My generation, I'm in my 50s, my generation, and anybody older than me, and probably 10 or 20 years younger than me, are not taught to deal with their emotions. They're not taught to think about their emotions or feel their emotions, or just taught to rub some dirt on it, don't cry. I think that's why. And if you're watching the replay, please subscribe to the channel. It's free and it helps me in the algorithm. I'm just reading my notes. Rupert Sheldrake said, I think that our minds are field-like. They are extended in space, not just confined to our brains. The gravitational field of the Earth extends invisibly through space. Nobody has a problem with that. And this made me want to scream and yell because I've been teaching astronomy for decades, and that's my master's degree. And he's absolutely right. The Earth has a huge magnetic field. Jupiter's magnetic field extends past Saturn, which is like hundreds of millions of miles. Nobody has a problem with that magnetic field. You can't see it. So why do they have a problem with our brain having a field? With our brain, with our mind, with our soul having a connection to something else? Why is that a problem? It makes me crazy. Episode 4 was about a very tall 17-year-old John Paul. He was 6'8". And him and his friend, Lily, his little girlfriend, called people who did not have telepathy muggles, which I thought was awesome. And he said voice speakers are muggles, is what he said. People who speak with their voice and don't use telepathy. And then another thing that came up in episode 4 was materialist science believe that savant syndrome is real. So, oh no. I wonder if it cut me off. This is very frustrating because it says I have an excellent connection. Okay, I don't know what happens. It says right on my page, excellent connection. You got to love the internet. Okay, keep commenting that you can see me every minute or so because I'm just like going on this whole tirade about it. So, savant syndrome is accepted by, let me know if you can hear me. Savant syndrome is accepted by scientists. I'm glad you heard that. Let me know how it's going. I don't understand why, but we're just going to go with it. I have excellent Wi-Fi. I don't know. Okay, perfect. Savant syndrome is accepted by scientists. What savant syndrome is when somebody, for instance, gets a head injury and they were, a mechanic, and then all of a sudden they're conducting amazing symphony music and never had a music lesson in their life because the injury turned something on in your brain. Okay, that's savant syndrome. There are a few hundred cases maybe in the world of that have been studied, and there's no body arguing that happens because they can see it, feel it, touch it. So why do they accept savant syndrome but they can't accept telepathy? That would be my question. So frustrating. It says excellent connection. I don't know. Okay. Well, if you can hear me, I will continue this on episode 5 next time. I'm sorry. The stream just went crazy. So I'll continue episode 5 next week or later in the week. I'm so sorry, everybody. Thank you for being patient. It's a shame.